The shock of finding an alternate life hidden in plain sight isn't something I'll recover from quickly. My name is Drew Reed, and I'm 34 years old. Each morning I wake in the same bedroom where my wife once slept beside me, now a space where I sort receipts and document the betrayal that nearly destroyed everything I've built. My electrician's tools rest by the door, the tangible proof of honest work that paid for walls she tried to claim as solely hers. Jade Reed, my wife of 7 years, believed her calculated lies would leave me broken and defeated, standing on an empty lawn while she kept the home my father left me. I recognize now that her violence wasn't spontaneous. It was the desperate act of someone whose deception was unraveling. I will rebuild what she tried to take, not with anger, but with evidence. There's dignity in fighting clean when someone fights dirty. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I stood in the kitchen as the evening shadows crept across the countertop. The bank statements lay spread before me like evidence at a crime scene. Dusk filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across the papers where I'd circled, highlighted, and annotated. A $9,800 cash advance from our joint credit card, money I never saw, never spent, never even knew about until the statement arrived yesterday. My finger rested on the withdrawal slip as I heard Jade's key in the front door. 7 years of marriage had taught me to recognize her moods by her footsteps. Tonight, they were sharp, purposeful. She knew what was waiting. The kitchen door swung open. Jade stood there, still in her work clothes, designer handbag dangling from her wrist. Her eyes locked immediately on the papers, then narrowed as she took in my stance. Shoulders squared, jaw set. "You don't get to audit me like I'm your employee," she snapped, tossing her purse onto the counter with enough force to scatter some of my carefully arranged papers. I kept my finger pressed firmly on the withdrawal slip. "I get to ask why 10 grand vanished," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Because I'm tired of living small with a man who thinks receipts are romance." I remembered the days when we'd clip coupons together, laughing about the fancy dinner we'd have someday. Back when her smile reached her eyes and her touch didn't feel like an obligation. "Romance doesn't bounce a mortgage payment," I replied. "You're gambling with the roof over our heads." Her lip curled slightly. "Oh, please. You act like some martyr. You're just a paycheck with a name." The words hit like ice water. Is that all I'd become to her? My jaw tightened involuntarily. "A paycheck that's kept the lights on while you swipe plastic like it's therapy." Jade took a step closer, her perfume, more expensive than the brand she used to wear, filling the space between us. "You think you're the victim here? You don't even satisfy me, Drew." Her voice dropped to something cruel and intimate. "You can't handle bills, you can't handle me, and you sure as hell can't handle the kind of life I want." I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, but clarity. The cold recognition that the woman standing before me was no longer the person I'd married. Maybe she never had been. "Then maybe the problem isn't the life, Jade," I said quietly. "Maybe it's you." Her eyes went cold, pupils contracting to pinpoints. "Say that again." Part of me knew I should back down, but 7 years of suspicions, doubts, and disappearing money solidified my resolve. I said, "Maybe it's you." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Jade lunged forward, her face contorted. There was nothing impulsive in her movement, just calculated fury as she drove her heel directly into my groin. Hard, deliberate, like she'd thought about it before. The pain was blinding. I doubled over, my knees hitting the tile floor with a crack that barely registered through the wave of nausea and agony. My lungs seized, unable to draw breath. Through watering eyes, I saw Jade standing over me, her face a mask of contempt rather than concern. Not horror at what she'd done, not remorse, just cold satisfaction. In that moment, gasping on my kitchen floor, I made a decision. My phone was still in my pocket. With trembling fingers, I pulled it out and dialed 911. I pressed the speaker button deliberately, making sure every word would be recorded. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice filled the kitchen. "My wife just assaulted me," I managed, each word an effort through the pain. "I need help." I gave our address, my name, explained what had happened, all while Jade's expression shifted from satisfaction to disbelief to something calculating. "You're calling the cops? On me?" Her voice rose. "They'll never believe you." But I kept talking to the dispatcher, describing the situation clearly, documenting. Because the truth without evidence is just a feeling, and feelings don't hold up in court. Officers are on their way, the dispatcher assured me. Stay on the line. Jade began pacing, muttering about control and manipulation, phrases that sounded rehearsed, testing narratives in real time while I remained hunched on the floor, one hand still holding the phone. Through the kitchen window, I saw the flash of red and blue lights reflecting across our yard. Then came the sharp, authoritative knock at our front door. Officer Gutierrez had arrived. Officer Gutierrez was shorter than me, but carried himself with a quiet authority that filled the room. His partner, a tall woman with dark hair pulled into a tight bun, stepped in behind him, eyes scanning our kitchen, taking in the scattered bank statements, my hunched posture, Jade's defiant stance. "Sir, are you all right?" Gutierrez asked, crouching slightly to meet my eyes. I shook my head, still struggling to straighten up. She kicked me. Hard. The female officer, Martinez, according to her nameplate, guided me to a chair while Gutierrez addressed Jade, who had already shifted into a different person. Her voice took on a trembling quality I'd never heard during our argument. "He's been controlling me for years," she said, arms crossed tightly, tracking my spending, isolating me from friends. I was just defending myself. "That's not true," I managed, as Martinez handed me an ice pack from our freezer. I pressed it against myself, the cold barely cutting through the throbbing pain. "She kicked me because I confronted her about taking money." Gutierrez maintained a neutral expression. "Sir, I need you to tell me exactly what happened tonight." I walked him through it. The missing money, the argument, her exact words, the deliberate kick. I pointed to the bank statement still visible on the counter. I never touched her. I never threatened her. I just said maybe she was the problem, and she attacked me. "He's twisting everything," Jade interjected, pacing now. "He's always been manipulative." "Ask anyone." "Actually," came a voice from the doorway, "I heard quite a bit." Mrs. Doherty stood there, her silver hair caught in the hallway light. Our neighbor of 11 years looked smaller than usual in her faded housecoat, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "Ma'am?" Gutierrez turned toward her. "I heard him cry out," she said, nodding toward me. "Heard her shouting after." "Walls are thin in these townhomes." She looked at Jade with thinly veiled disapproval. "Not the first time I've heard her voice raised, but definitely the first time I've heard him in pain." Jade's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. You're all—" "Ma'am," Gutierrez cut her off. "I need you to stop interrupting." He turned back to me. "Do you want to press charges?" The question hung in the air. Part of me wanted to say no, to believe this was a terrible mistake we could move past. But the cold calculation in Jade's eyes when she'd stood over me, that wasn't a mistake. "I want documentation," I said finally, "and I want her out of the house tonight." Gutierrez nodded. "Based on what I'm seeing, I'm issuing an emergency protective order. Ma'am," he addressed Jade, "you'll need to pack essentials and leave the premises. You can have an officer return with you tomorrow for additional belongings." "You can't be serious," Jade sputtered, looking between the officers. "This is my house, too." "It's procedure in domestic violence situations," Martinez explained calmly. "You need to gather what you need for tonight." "This is about control," Jade hissed at me, then turned to Gutierrez with practiced vulnerability. "Can't you see what he's doing?" "Ma'am, please go pack your things," Gutierrez repeated firmly. Jade's face hardened. She stormed upstairs, footsteps heavy on each stair. "I want to go to urgent care," I told Gutierrez, still clutching the ice pack. "I need this documented medically." He nodded. "Smart move. Officer Martinez will take your statement while I supervise upstairs." While giving my statement, I heard Jade dragging something across the floor above us. A suitcase, probably. Mrs. Doherty had retreated to her home, but not before squeezing my shoulder gently. Martinez photographed the scene, then waited while I carefully stood. The pain had dulled to a persistent throb, but I knew from experience with job site injuries that documentation mattered more than comfort right now. When Jade came downstairs, dragging a large suitcase, she paused near me. "You'll regret this," she said quietly, voice stripped of its earlier pretense. "You have no idea what you've started." I said nothing, watching as the officers escorted her out. At urgent care, a tired-looking doctor documented the bruising, concern evident in his eyes. "This was deliberate," he noted, taking photographs for my file. I nodded, throat tight. When I finally returned home hours later, the house was empty except for Ranger. Our shepherd mix whined anxiously, pressing against my leg as I locked the door behind me. "Just us now, boy," I murmured, scratching behind his ears. I moved slowly through the quiet house, stopping at the refrigerator where our wedding photo was held by a magnet shaped like a lightning bolt. A joke about my profession. We looked happy. I'd been happy. In our bedroom, I stared at the empty side of the bed, sheets still rumpled from when Jade had last slept there. Something told me this wasn't over, that Jade's parting words weren't empty. The kick was just the beginning. I slept with the lights on. Not that I slept much. Every creak in the house jerked me awake, my body tensing for another fight that wasn't coming, at least not physically, not yet. When morning finally broke, I was already up, watching dawn creep through the blinds like a cautious visitor. Coffee. I needed coffee. The familiar routine felt steadying, measuring grounds, filling the reservoir, hitting the button. Small, normal actions when nothing felt normal anymore. Ranger padded behind me, his nails clicking on the kitchen tile. At least he was still here. At least I wasn't completely alone. "Just us now, boy," I murmured, same as I had last night. The words felt more real in daylight. I remembered the morning after my dad died, how I'd gone through the motions of making breakfast, even though food tasted like sand. This felt similar. Life continuing when everything had changed. The doorbell rang at 8:17 a.m. Ranger barked once, then waited, ears perked. Through the peephole, I saw a courier in a blue uniform, not Jade. I opened the door. "Drew Reed?" he asked, extending a clipboard. "That's me. Sign here, please." The envelope he handed me was heavy, official. My stomach tightened as I closed the door. Whatever this was, it wasn't good news. Good news doesn't arrive by courier at 8 a.m. the morning after your wife kicks you in the groin and gets removed by police. I tore it open at the kitchen counter. My coffee sat untouched, steam rising and dissipating. Legal language jumped out at me. Emergency petition, Domestic Violence Prevention Act, exclusive possession, spousal support required. The more I read, the colder I felt. Jade claimed I had pushed her last week, had controlled her finances, had intimidated her for years. That last night was her finally standing up for herself after I cornered her in the kitchen. She wanted me out of the house, my house, and wanted me to pay her bills while I lived somewhere else. I read it twice, then a third time, a hollow feeling expanding in my chest. She'd flipped everything, completely reversed what happened. "Unbelievable," I whispered. Ranger nudged my hand with his nose, sensing my distress. I remembered what Officer Gutierrez had said about documentation. I'd been smart to get medical records last night, but I needed more. I needed a lawyer. My hands were shaking slightly as I called Mark, an electrician I'd worked with for years who'd gone through a brutal divorce. "Hey, Drew, what's up? I need a good attorney. Fast." There was a pause. "Jade?" "Yeah." He didn't ask for details. "Celine Kim. Saved my ass when Brenda tried to take everything. She doesn't lose." 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with Celine's office. By some miracle, or perhaps because Mark had called ahead, she could see me that afternoon. "Bring everything," the receptionist instructed. "All documentation, all communication, Ms. Kim will want to see it all." I spent the next hour in a fog, gathering what I could. I called the police station for a copy of last night's report. I emailed urgent care for my medical records. I took screenshots of texts from Jade over the past month. All those don't wait up messages, all those unexplained absences. At 2 p.m., I sat across from Celine Kim in a sleek downtown office. She read Jade's petition without expression, then set it down and looked at me directly. "Tell me what really happened." I did, all of it. The missing money, the argument, the kick. She took notes, nodding occasionally. "We win with paper," she said when I finished. "Not with emotions, not with he said, she said. With documented, provable facts." She tapped my folder of evidence. "This is a good start. We'll need more." I nodded, relief washing over me. She believed me. "Can she really take the house?" I asked. "It was my dad's. I inherited it before we even met." "No," Celine said firmly. "Not if we do this right." That night, I called my mother. I'd been dreading it, but she needed to know. "Drew, you never call this late. What's wrong?" I told her everything. Mom listened silently, which wasn't like her at all. When I finished, she said, "You document everything, you hear me? Jade's always been calculating. I've bitten my tongue for years because she was your choice, but I'm not surprised. Don't underestimate how far she'll go." "I won't," I promised. After we hung up, I spread everything across the kitchen table. The petition, the medical records, the texts, the police report. Ranger lay at my feet, his warm presence anchoring me as I organized and labeled each piece of evidence. I placed Jade's petition next to my growing pile of truth, paper against paper, her lies against my evidence. "I'm not leaving," I told Ranger, who thumped his tail against the floor. "This is our home. She doesn't get to erase me from it." I picked a corner booth at Ed's downtown diner, keeping my back to the wall. Old habit from my dad, always know who's coming through the door. I'd been waiting 15 minutes, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt toast, when Ramon Ortiz walked in. Celine had recommended him. "He gets results," she'd said. "Not cheap, but thorough." Ramon spotted me immediately. Mid-40s, weathered face, sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything in the room. He wore a casual jacket that had seen better days but fit him well. "Drew Reed?" he asked, sliding into the booth. I nodded. "Thanks for meeting me." "Let's skip the small talk," Ramon said, pulling out a small notebook. "Tell me what you need." I laid it out for him. The missing money, Jade's late nights, the mysterious cash advance, her false abuse claims. I showed him the bank statements with the $9,800 withdrawal. "I need to know where that money went," I explained, "and who she's been with. She's claimed I'm controlling her finances, but I think she's hiding something major." Ramon's pen moved quickly across his notepad. His expression never changed as I spoke. "Casino withdrawals leave trails," he finally said. "ATM footage, Players Club cards. If she's gambling, we'll find it." He tapped his pen against the statement. "What about this guy you mentioned? The one you think she's seeing?" "I don't have a name, just suspicions." "Late-night texts, coming home smelling like cologne I don't wear." Ramon nodded. "People having affairs develop patterns, predictable times, locations." He slid the notebook into his pocket. "I'll need 3 days, 5,000 up front." The amount made me wince, but I wrote the check. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth. "I'll call when I have something," Ramon said, standing. He didn't offer to shake hands. The next 3 days blurred together. I pulled bank statements, credit reports, property records, everything Celine wanted for our temporary orders hearing. Meanwhile, I juggled work, taking every job I could to keep cash flowing. My crew didn't ask questions when I looked tired. They just worked. "Wednesday night," Ramon called. "Meet me at my office. Bring your laptop." His office was sparse. A desk, 2 chairs, filing cabinets. Nothing personal, not even a coffee mug. He gestured for me to sit, then inserted a flash drive into my computer. "3 things," he said, opening a folder. "First, the cash advance." The screen filled with grainy security footage. Jade at a casino ATM, timestamp matching the withdrawal. She wasn't alone. "Who's that?" I asked, pointing to a man in a leather jacket standing close behind her. "Brandon Pike," Ramon said. "Does the name mean anything?" My stomach twisted. Brandon was supposedly a casual friend, someone Jade knew from her office. I'd met him twice at company parties. Nothing memorable. "She told me they were just colleagues," I said quietly. Ramon nodded. "They look closer than colleagues here." He clicked to the next image, Brandon's arm around Jade's waist as they moved toward the high-stakes poker room. My throat tightened. I'd known, somewhere deep down, but seeing it made it real. "Second item," Ramon continued, pulling up financial records. "She's opened 3 credit cards in the past 6 months, all maxed out." He pointed to the balances, over 20,000 total. Cash advances, luxury purchases, hotel charges. I stared at the screen, my chest hollow. "And the third thing?" Ramon hesitated. "She's applied for an apartment. Rental application submitted yesterday morning. Before the hearing," I said. "Before a judge has even ruled." "People who expect to lose prepare accordingly," Ramon observed. I drove home in a fog, Ramon's flash drive heavy in my pocket. Back at the house, I immediately called my bank and froze our joint account. Then I set up a new business account at a different bank and rerouted my crew's payroll deposits. Whatever happened with Jade, my guys would get paid. In my workshop, I opened my laptop again and stared at the casino images. Jade and Brandon, his arm possessively around her waist. The timestamp confirmed it was the night she'd texted she was working late. I forwarded everything to Celine with a simple message. "Can we use this?" Sitting in the quiet of my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't even about the house. It was about years of deception, a life built on lies. I gripped the printed photo, the edges crumpling in my fist. How much else didn't I know? How deep did her betrayal go? I'd never been inside a courtroom before that Tuesday morning. The wood panels and formal atmosphere made my electrician's hands feel rough and out of place. I sat at a table beside Celine Kim, her posture perfect in a charcoal suit. Across the aisle, Jade looked like someone I barely recognized. Hair pulled back severely, wearing a conservative blue dress I'd never seen before. "All rise," the clerk announced as Judge Harmon entered. Celine had prepped me thoroughly. "Let the evidence speak," she'd said. "Your job is to be calm, clear, and credible." The judge reviewed both petitions, her eyes moving between us. When she asked for evidence, Celine stood. "Your Honor, we have the 911 recording from the night of the incident." My voice filled the courtroom, strained but steady, describing Jade's assault. I could hear the pain in my own words, the disbelief. When Jade's voice broke through in the background, snarling accusations, I noticed the judge's eyebrows rise slightly. "We also have medical documentation," Celine continued, submitting photos from urgent care showing the bruising. Jade leaned toward her attorney, whispering furiously. Her lawyer, a thin man named Pearson with expensive cufflinks, kept shaking his head. Celine saved the financial evidence for last. "Your Honor, we've discovered Mrs. Reed has been making substantial withdrawals from joint accounts without Mr. Reed's knowledge. She submitted the casino ATM records, the credit card applications, the mounting debt. Mr. Reed runs a small electrical business with employees who depend on him," Celine explained. "These financial actions threaten not just his stability, but their livelihoods as well." Judge Harmon studied the papers, her expression unreadable. Across the aisle, Jade's eyes bored into me with such hatred, I had to look away. I'd never seen that look before, not even the night she kicked me. Remember when we used to sit together planning vacations, picking out paint colors for the living room? I wondered if that person had ever existed at all. "Based on the evidence presented," Judge Harmon finally said, "I'm issuing temporary orders. Mr. Reed is granted exclusive use of the marital residence. Mrs. Reed is prohibited from entering the property without court permission." Jade's attorney tried to object, but the judge continued. "Additionally, Mrs. Reed is barred from making withdrawals from joint accounts. All major spending is frozen pending final resolution." She looked directly at Jade. "The court takes domestic violence seriously, regardless of gender. These orders will remain in effect until our next hearing." Outside the courtroom, Celine squeezed my shoulder. "First round to us. Go home, Drew. Get some rest." Jade and her attorney huddled in the hallway, her voice carrying despite her attempts to whisper. "This is bullshit. He's playing victim when he—" "Not here," her lawyer cut her off, guiding her toward the elevator. I drove home in silence, a weight lifted that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The house felt different that evening, quieter, calmer. I made scrambled eggs for dinner, something simple I could manage. The sound of the whisk against the bowl, the sizzle of butter in the pan, normal sounds that had been drowned out by tension for too long. Ranger padded into the kitchen, nudging my leg as I cooked. I slipped him a bit of egg. "Just us now, buddy," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I took a full breath that didn't catch in my chest. The mediation was scheduled for Thursday morning. Celine had explained it was standard procedure, a chance to resolve issues without further court involvement. "They'll try to get you to compromise," she warned. "Remember what we discussed." The conference room was neutral territory, a long table with water pitchers and legal pads. Jade arrived with Pearson, neither acknowledging me as they took their seats. Celine began by summarizing our position, her tone measured but firm. When she finished, she reached for a folder. "Before we discuss terms, I think there are some additional matters, Mrs. Reed should be aware we've discovered." She slid the folder across the table. Inside were the casino surveillance stills Ramon had provided, Jade and Brandon together, time-stamped images of late nights and secret meetings. Behind those were copies of credit card applications with Jade's signature, applications I'd known nothing about until Ramon's investigation. "We also have footage of Mrs. Reed's companion," Celine said, placing a photo of Brandon front and center. "Would Mrs. Reed care to explain who this gentleman is and why they were withdrawing funds from the joint account?" Jade's face drained of color as she stared at the evidence. Her attorney leaned close, whispering urgently in her ear. She shook her head, refusing to answer. "If Mrs. Reed won't address these issues now," Celine continued, "we'll be forced to introduce them at the evidentiary hearing, along with the pattern of financial impropriety." Pearson requested a break. As they stepped into the hallway, I exhaled slowly, my hands steady despite the tension. When we also stepped out for a private conversation, I found myself face to face with Jade in the corridor. She stared at me, her eyes no longer calculating or manipulative, just filled with raw, undisguised rage. This wasn't the fear of someone caught. This was the fury of someone planning their next move. The phone rang early, too early for good news. Celine's name flashed on the screen and my stomach tightened. I'd come to understand that attorneys don't call at 7:15 a.m. to say everything's fine. "Drew, I need you to stay calm when you hear this," she said, her voice controlled but urgent. "What happened?" "Jade's attorney just filed a supplemental petition with the court. They've produced a sworn affidavit from someone named Brandon Pike. He claims he witnessed you shoving Jade against a wall 3 weeks before the incident." My blood went cold. Brandon, the same guy from the casino footage with Jade. "That's a complete lie," I said, gripping the phone harder. "Brandon's been in and out of my life for years. We grab beers sometimes, but he's never even been to my house when Jade was home." "I figured as much," Celine said, "but his statement is detailed. He claims it happened at your place during a barbecue. Says you got jealous when Jade was talking to him." I laughed, a harsh sound even to my own ears. "There was no barbecue. I haven't hosted anything in months." The betrayal hit like a sucker punch. Brandon wasn't just Jade's casino buddy. He was willing to commit perjury for her. I thought of the few times we'd had drinks, the way he'd listened to my work stories, nodding along. Was he reporting back to Jade even then? "This changes things," Celine continued. "The judge has set an evidentiary hearing for next week. They're going to put Brandon on the stand." I rubbed my forehead, feeling the start of a headache. So her word against mine wasn't enough. Now she's recruiting witnesses to lie. "This is actually good news," Celine said, surprising me. "False testimony is easier to disprove than he said she said. If he's lying about a specific date and event, we can break his story." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at nothing. The coffee in my mug grew cold. I remembered bringing Brandon a beer at O'Malley's when his girlfriend dumped him, listening to him complain for hours. What a joke. I was halfway through my workday, troubleshooting an electrical panel at a commercial site, when my phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Drew Reed?" a formal voice asked. "Speaking. This is Marcus Weber from First National Bank, regarding your business account. We've placed a temporary hold on all transactions due to potential fraud complaints." My hand froze on the circuit breaker I'd been testing. "What fraud complaints?" "We received documentation alleging coercive financial activity and unauthorized transactions. Until this is resolved, the account will remain frozen as a precautionary measure." Jade. It had to be. "Those are false claims," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I need that account for my business operations." "You'll need to bring documentation to the branch to dispute the hold. The investigation typically takes 5 to 7 business days." 5 to 7 days. Payroll was due tomorrow. I called Celine immediately, explaining the situation while standing in the parking lot, watching my crew work through the windows. "This is textbook financial abuse," she said. "We'll file an emergency motion, but I need you to pull all your banking records. Every transaction, every authorized payment." When I returned to my truck, my phone was lit up with texts from my employees. "Hey boss, just checking my direct deposit isn't showing up yet. Drew, my rent's due Monday. When are we getting paid? Everything okay with payroll?" I sat in the driver's seat, a cold rage building in my chest. This wasn't just about hurting me anymore. Jade was going after my livelihood, my reputation, my ability to support the people who depended on me. She knew exactly what she was doing. If my crew didn't get paid, they'd quit. If they quit, my contracts would fail. If my contracts failed, I'd lose everything I'd built. That night, I paced the living room floor, Ranger watching me with anxious eyes from his bed in the corner. Every few circuits, he'd whine softly, sensing my distress. "It's okay, boy," I murmured, but we both knew it wasn't. I finally stopped pacing and called Ramon. "I need your help," I said when he answered. "Brandon Pike is lying under oath for Jade. Claims he saw me shove her at a barbecue that never happened. Can you find out where he really was that day? Find witnesses, security footage, anything?" "I'll dig into it," Ramon promised. "If he was anywhere public, there's always a digital footprint." After we hung up, I walked out to the porch, Ranger padding along behind me. The midnight air was cool on my face as I stared out at the silent street. My phone buzzed with another text from my foreman, asking if we'd still have a company by the end of the month. I didn't have an answer for him. My entire business, 7 years of sweat and 16-hour days might collapse before I could prove Brandon was lying. Would there be anything left to salvage when this was over? The call came at 6:42 a.m. I was already up, nursing a cup of black coffee, staring at spreadsheets to calculate how long my crew could last without paychecks. Sleep had been scarce, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. "Drew," Ramon's voice had an edge of excitement I hadn't heard before. "I'm outside Brewers on 5th. You need to get down here." "What did you find?" I asked, already reaching for my keys. "Your friend Brandon? He was playing darts here the entire night. He claims he saw you assault Jade. The manager remembers him. Apparently he got hammered and tried to hit on the bartender." My hand froze mid-air. "You're sure about this?" "I've got the point-of-sale logs, credit card transactions, and the bar's security footage. He closed out his tab at 1:17 a.m., 2 towns away from where he claimed to be witnessing your violence." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "I'll meet you at your office in 30. The drive to Ramon's place felt like floating. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had concrete proof someone was lying. Not just speculation or my word against theirs, actual time-stamped evidence. Ramon's office was a converted garage with filing cabinets lining the walls. When I arrived, he was printing still images from the security footage. There was Brandon, his scruffy beard unmistakable, leaning against the bar with a beer. The timestamp in the corner read 9:43 p.m., exactly when he claimed to be at our non-existent barbecue. "But this is the real gold," Ramon said, sliding a receipt across the desk. I picked it up, studying Brandon's sloppy signature at the bottom. 4 beers, 2 shots of whiskey, and buffalo wings, paid and signed for at 1:17 a.m. The manager remembered him because he tried to add a $20 tip to his own card after the bartender turned him down, Ramon explained. They had to void the transaction and run it again. I held the receipt like it was made of glass. "This puts him 2 towns over. At the exact time he swore he was watching you shove Jade. It's not just a lie, it's provable perjury." That night, I dug through my phone. I hadn't spoken much with Brandon in months. Jade had always claimed he was unreliable, which now seemed like convenient groundwork. But I kept backups of everything, paranoid about losing work contacts. I scrolled through recovered messages, finding sparse conversations with Brandon from the past year. Then I hit a thread from 3 weeks ago that made my stomach drop. "Jade, need to talk to you about Drew Brandon." "What's up?" "Jade, he's trying to take everything. I need someone to back me up about how he gets Brandon." "Gets how?" "Jade, aggressive." "You've seen it, Brandon." "Not really, Jade. If you back me up, I'll make sure you're taken care of." There it was, Jade recruiting a false witness, in black and white. I scrolled further, finding more. "Brandon, what exactly do you need me to say?" "Jade, just that you saw him push me at that BBQ at our place. Nothing crazy, just enough to show a pattern." "Brandon, when was this BBQ supposed to be?" "Jade, 3 Saturdays ago. Around 8:30, I screenshot every message, heart pounding. This wasn't just Brandon lying. This was Jade orchestrating it, coaching him on exactly what to say, inventing an event that never happened. That rush of vindication, of finally having proof beyond doubt, was unlike anything I'd felt before. It wasn't joy exactly, but a cold clarity. The truth had been there all along, waiting for someone to uncover it. The next morning I drove straight to Celine's office, the folder of evidence clutched in my hand like a lifeline. She cleared her desk as I laid everything out. The bar receipt, the security footage stills, the text messages. "This is exactly what we needed," she said, organizing them into a courtroom-ready packet. "Brandon's perjury undermines Jade's entire case. What about my business account? With this evidence of intentional deception, we can motion for immediate release of the funds. The judge won't look kindly on someone using false testimony to freeze a legitimate business." I nodded, relief washing through me. We spent the next hour preparing my testimony. Clear, factual, unemotional. "Just tell the truth," Celine advised. "No embellishment, no anger. Let the evidence speak for itself." I practiced in the car on the way home, speaking aloud to an empty passenger seat. I never shoved my wife. Brandon Pike was not at our home that night. He was at Brewer's Bar, as these receipts show. The truth was finally strong enough to break through Jade's web of lies. After weeks of feeling powerless, I had something solid to fight with. The morning of the evidentiary hearing, I stood outside the courthouse. the wind whipping around the concrete pillars. In my hand was the file containing everything: the receipts, the screenshots, the proof that would save my business and my name. I took a deep breath and walked up the steps, my footfalls echoing against a stone. I wouldn't leave without justice. I sat at the petitioner's table next to Celine, trying to keep my breathing steady. The courtroom felt smaller than it had during previous hearings, more cramped, with the wood paneling seeming to close in around us. Jade and her attorney sat across the aisle, her face composed into that practiced look of victimhood I'd seen her rehearse in our bathroom mirror. Officer Gutierrez took the stand first, his uniform crisp, his manner professional. He described arriving at our home that night, finding me doubled over in pain. "And what did you observe about the petitioner's physical condition?" Celine asked. Mr. Reed was in obvious distress, clutching his groin area. He had difficulty standing upright and spoke in short sentences due to the pain. "And the respondent, Mrs. Reed? What was her demeanor?" "She was agitated, pacing, speaking over Mr. Reed repeatedly. When I attempted to interview them separately, she continued to interrupt from the other room." I watched the judge's pen move across his notepad. His face remained impassive, but I could see he was building a picture, piece by methodical piece. Mrs. Doherty testified next, her silver hair neatly pinned back, hands folded in her lap. "I heard the young man cry out," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "It was distressing, then shouting. I was concerned enough to look out my window, where I saw the police arrive later." The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath when Ramon took the stand. He laid out the evidence methodically, first the bar receipts with Brandon's signature, then still frames from Brewer's security camera showing Brandon playing darts at 1:13 a.m., exactly when he claimed to be witnessing me shoving Jade. "And you verified this timestamp?" Celine asked. "Yes, counsel. I spoke with the bar owner who confirmed their system time is accurate. They sync it weekly for inventory purposes." When Brandon took the stand, he couldn't meet my eyes. He fidgeted with his shirt cuff as Celine approached with the evidence folder. "Mr. Pike, can you explain how you witnessed an incident at the Reed residence when you were verifiably at Brewer's Bar on 5th Street at the exact same time?" Brandon's face flushed red. I might have been confused about the date." "Confused? Or deliberately untruthful?" Celine pressed, placing the text message screenshots before him. "Did Mrs. Reed ask you to provide false testimony?" He stared at the messages, then at his hands. "She said it would help her case." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge's expression hardened as he reviewed Brandon's affidavit side by side with the evidence. "Your Honor," the judge said, cutting off further questioning, "I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of potential perjury charges." Brandon slumped in his seat, defeated. I felt no satisfaction watching him, only a hollow certainty that Jade would find someone else to manipulate next time. Then came the moment that broke everything open. Celine played the Ring doorbell audio, clear enough that everyone could hear Jade's voice hissing, "Make me," before the thud and my cry of pain. The judge removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. When he spoke, his voice cut through the silent courtroom like a blade. "Now the court finds Mrs. Reed's petition for protection without merit and hereby dissolves it. Mr. Reed's order is made permanent for a period of 1 year. The court awards exclusive possession of the marital residence to Mr. Reed. Spousal support is denied. Debts incurred by Mrs. Reed without Mr. Reed's knowledge are assigned solely to her." He turned to the bank's lawyer, who had been summoned regarding my frozen business account. "The court orders the immediate release of Mr. Reed's business accounts. This is an emergency order, effective immediately." The bank's lawyer stood, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, we apologize for any inconvenience to Mr. Reed. The funds will be released today." I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of weeks lifting from my shoulders. "Additionally," the judge continued, "custody of the pet dog Ranger is awarded to Mr. Reed, as evidence shows Mrs. Reed abandoned the animal when she left the residence." That afternoon, Jade arrived with a deputy to return her house keys. I waited in the driveway, arms crossed, Ranger sitting attentively at my feet. Her eyes were red-rimmed but calculating as she approached. "Drew," she said softly, that familiar manipulation in her voice. "We could fix this. People fight." I kept my voice level. "People don't kick. People don't lie under oath. You don't get access to me anymore." "You took everything," she said, her voice breaking. "No," I replied, holding out my hand for the keys. "I kept what was mine." The keys landed in my palm with a cold metallic finality. I closed my fingers around them as she turned away, the deputy following her to her car. Ranger pressed against my leg as I watched her drive away, the same way she'd left that night, without looking back. 6 months after the hearing, I sat on my front porch, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The coffee in my mug warmed my hands against the morning chill. Ranger sprawled at my feet, his chin resting on my boot, content and loyal, as always. It's strange how a life can fall apart and rebuild itself. Not into the same structure, never that, but into something solid again. Different angles, maybe stronger joints. My crew got paid on time, every time. The business account stayed healthy, contracts flowed in steadily. The casino even mailed me a restitution check after the court ruling on the fraud. $9,800 plus interest. Not enough to erase what happened, but enough to feel like something close to justice. I'd refinanced the truck into my name alone. The house, this house my father left me before I ever met Jade, was mine again in every way that mattered. No ghosts in the corners anymore. Just me, Ranger, and the quiet I once took for granted. Mom came over for dinner that evening, bringing her famous apple cobbler. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd spread out bank statements that night everything changed. "You look better," she said, studying my face. "You've got color back." I nodded, serving her a slice of cobbler. "I sleep with the lights off now." She understood what I meant. Those first weeks after everything, I'd kept every light burning, jumping at shadows, half expecting Jade to appear with new accusations, new lies. "I'm proud of you," Mom said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "Not everyone fights back. Some people just collapse." I thought about that word, collapse. How close I'd come to it. How easy it would have been to surrender the house, the business, my dignity, just to make the chaos stop. I couldn't let her win, I said simply. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, Ranger watching hopefully from his spot near the table. "Heard anything about her?" Mom finally asked. I shrugged. "Small town, news travels." Jade's downfall hadn't been private. Probation for the restraining order violations. Community service picking up trash along Highway 16 every weekend for 6 months. Eviction from the fancy apartment she'd tried to rent when her credit cards maxed out. Last I heard, she was in some studio apartment across town, the kind with paper-thin walls and shared laundry in the basement. And that friend of yours? The one who lied? Brandon? I set down my fork. The perjury charges cost him his job with the city. Nobody wants to hire someone who got caught lying under oath. He ghosted Jade the minute the heat turned up, but it was too late by then. Brandon had disappeared from our community, slinking away to wherever people go when their reputation collapses. I'd seen him once at the gas station. He'd turned and walked the other way, shoulders hunched, avoiding my eyes. "Good," Mom said firmly. "Actions have consequences." That was Mom, direct, unflinching when it came to justice. She'd raised me to believe in accountability, and I'd held on to that belief even when the world tried to shake it loose. Jade kept trying to reinvent the story with anyone who'd listen, but the people who mattered already knew the truth, the quiet, documented truth. The man in the leather jacket from the casino never resurfaced. He'd vanished, leaving Jade to shoulder her debts and her shame alone. After Mom left, I stood on the porch again, looking at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. I thought about who I'd been before, trusting, maybe naive, believing marriage meant safety. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Trust isn't given anymore. It's earned through consistent actions, verified with open eyes. If you're where I was, crushed under someone's heel, watching them try to rewrite reality, hear me. Justice isn't a feeling. It's a plan you execute one receipt at a time, one court filing, one piece of evidence. Later that night, I locked my front door, checking it twice from habit. Ranger curled up on his bed beside mine, his breathing steady in the darkness. I whispered it aloud, just once, like sealing a promise. Revenge isn't loud, it's organized. I didn't just survive her. I dismantled the life she tried to build on my back and took mine back piece by piece. The house, the business, the savings I could recover, the dog, the quiet. Most importantly, I reclaimed my peace. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.